This can't be how it ends for me. I've not been the best person, nor made the kindest decisions. But God, hear me. This is my promise to whatever higher entity is listening. I will do better. In the midst of my inner turmoil, I've lost track of how long I have been laying here. Time eludes me, and I continue to fade in and out of consciousness. For that reason, I can't say how long I've been sprawled across the side of this deserted country road and left for dead like some filthy animal. I'm reduced to a mere blob of flesh. My body is broken and bathed in blood. I'm nothing more than roadkill. By what virtue am I even still alive? There has to be a medical term to explain why I don't feel the damage done to my limbs, but I'm not exactly an expert in the field, so I chalk it up to trauma shutting down my nerves. I can't remember every single event that led up to this moment, and I can scarcely pinpoint the direction back to my car. My mind is foggy, and I feel completely disoriented, likely due to the foreign chemicals that have infiltrated my bloodstream. Earlier, I was held captive. This much I know. I was bound and beaten. Yet, that's not the worst of it. My captor injected something into the soft spot of flesh behind my ear. I can recall distinctly hearing it gush in behind my ear canal.
To preserve you.
I remember the hooded guy mocking me, his laughter sickly and theatrical after I asked him what was in the syringe. Maybe I'm better off this way then. I've made my escape, and I'm no longer being tormented. I don't have to face my past mistakes, and I can die with the minimal peace that I'm allowed. I close my eyes and try to focus on happier moments, until subsequently, I realize with horror that being left for death is an ungranted mercy, because I can see two figures down the road ahead coming up to meet my mangled body.
No, I'll do better. Please.
I interlace my fingers together and pray like I always swore I absolutely would not. My plea for redemption is cut short when a hand grabs me by the arm and yanks me upwards. The pain hits me for a split second and I wince, biting down on the few teeth I still have left embedded in my bloody gums. My cry is suppressed, and soon thereafter, an anesthetic sensation washes over me again. The rough pull on my physique causes the plates in my kneecap to audibly shift. Or I guess that's what's happening, judging from the harsh cracking sound my body produces. I can't feel anything, and with the bones sticking out from my leg, I really can't tell if I even still have joints intact. The night was busy and I accepted orders blindly. I suppose it was a bit of an adrenaline rush, pushing myself to make multiple deliveries in a timely manner. To be fair, Fridays were always bustling, and I didn't mind offering up my weekends for the quick money. One specific order popped up offering a worthwhile tip, and despite wanting to take it, I realized that it might delay my course, since it was going to the motel far out of town. It was a lengthy drive, but I figured I could risk doing it quickly. The motel was well known as a hooker's nest and a shady meetup spot for a wide variety of questionable people. A place I personally made a visit to before, to my utmost shame. Not wanting to think back on that time, I threw the bag of food onto the passenger seat of my beat-up sedan and began the drive. I was delighted to hear my phone buzz with notifications of new orders coming in, which briefly diverted my attention from the road and almost caused me to miss my exit onto the highway. After that close call, I only glanced at the GPS mounted on my dashboard, not wanting to potentially ruin an already good pace of work by getting into an easily avoidable car accident. Knowing what I know now, that would have been a better alternative to end the night with. I pulled up in the motel parking lot with music blaring. The delivery app on my phone specified room 12, and regretfully, I knew just where to find it. In fact, it almost seemed too coincidental that it was this exact room. I wondered if hesitation would make me look suspicious, so I dismissed any deterrence and quickly grabbed the bag of food, taking a brief glimpse of the area only to find it completely devoid of life. Although it was fairly early in the evening, it was already far past dark. The place was poorly lit up with yellow fluorescent lights, some of which only flickered on in random patterns. Even from a distance, I could hear the tapping sound of moths flying into the bulbs to meet certain death. It was the only noise apart from muffled static conversations that likely came from the old motel room television sets. In addition to the neon signage, the place felt trapped in the 80s. As I switched off the ignition, I hummed along to the song that resumed playing in my head. Some might have called the nervous pose a deliberate distraction to suppress a certain memory. I jogged to the door marked with the number 12. The letter 2 hung skewed against a thick layer of cobwebs. As I expected, nobody answered the door, so I took the delivery over to reception.
Delivery for room 12?
I greeted the middle-aged woman seated behind the check-in desk. She was the spitting image of a stereotypical hillbilly, with her arms smudged with indiscernible tattoos and her lips smacking as she chewed on a piece of gum. She was reading a novel with a blatant erotic depiction on the cover and only acknowledged me with a single eyebrow raised.
Empty.
She dismissed me by turning a page in her book. Clearly, she wasn't going to help.
All right.
I sighed and made my way back to the car. Starting off the night with a prank delivery wasn't ideal, but I was determined not to let it deter my progress. Guess I got dinner sorted then, I mumbled to myself, and climbed back behind the wheel. Just as I was about to turn on the engine, something in the window of the presumed unoccupied room demanded my attention. There was a figure of a woman standing in the window, her features cloaked in shadows. Her head slanted to the side quickly. The abnormal angle in which it fell against her shoulder made it appear as though her neck snapped straight off. Rightfully creeped out, I looked away and even locked my door, for whatever good that did me. On the drive back to a local Burger King, I tried to forget the unusual thing I had seen. Ignorance was bliss, and I didn't try to find a logical reason for it. Like many other occurrences, I just wanted it wiped from my memory. The rest of the night went far better. I was racking in generous tips and seeing to my orders swiftly, though the flow of work wasn't seamless. An order came through at exactly 9:33 p.m. It was a repeat pepperoni pizza order addressed to the same motel room. This time there was a note attached, and it simply read, 21 December. It was my date of birth and of completely no relevance to the order. The prankster likely saw it on my profile somewhere and was trying to be funny. It also happened to be the same date of a certain incident, though there was no way anybody could know about that. I declined the order. This persistently occurred again at a particular hour throughout the night. The orders all had increasingly concerning notes attached to them, and what seemed like a harmless prank soon turned hauntingly ominous. At 10:33 p.m., I received an order with a note saying, "Red lace is your favorite, isn't it?" I was trying to block the customer, but was still unfamiliar with the new interface of my delivery app, and I didn't want to waste any time trying to relearn a system when I could be doing more deliveries. I ignored it and carried on working. Then, at 11:33 p.m., another order came through with an additional message stating, "You should learn to pay your debts." I couldn't make sense of this one at all, and it clearly sounded like the cliché line of a mock threat. The other message that popped up at 12:33 a.m. was too heinous and graphic to repeat. It was gibberish at first. Then I realized the words were lyrics to a weird rap song containing foul language and derogatory terms. At 1:33 a.m., yet another order was placed by the motel, and this time there was an image attached in the notes section. I didn't even know there was an option to share media, but I opened a picture of two black high heels. The shoes were on a gray linen bed, the same sheets used at the motel. Draped over them was a piece of red lace lingerie and a handwritten note asking, "Did you enjoy your stay?" I stared at the image for a good while as my world came crashing down all around me. This couldn't be real. How could anybody have found out? Someone was messing with me and going too far with this dangerous ruse. So I decided to end my shift at 2 a.m. and retreat back to the motel. My plan was to stalk out across the street from the building, figuring that the person behind it all must have been one of the employees at the place. Somebody probably saw me that night in December and was hunting for a reaction. I wasn't about to give them one. Denial was my steadfast recourse. It was nearing 3 a.m. once I finally made it back on the highway leading out of town. When I noticed the parking lot of the motel had grown a bit crowded, I decided to nest my car among the rest of the vehicles scattered about. As soon as room 12 came into view, a light switched off from inside. It confirmed at least one part of my suspicions. There was someone in there, and they already had eyes on me. I had no way of knowing if the development was due to my arrival, but I felt exposed either way. A little fed up with the running jokes played on me all night long, I left the car and raced up to the room. How do you confront a stalker? I never received that memo, so I gave in to anger. I knocked on the door and yelled out, "I know you're in there!" The blinds covering the window rustled ever so slightly, and I called out again. "You've been messing with my deliveries all night. I suggest you cut the bullshit right now." There came no response, and I wondered if there was anything more than that left to say. As I hovered near the door, pondering on my next course of action, the door suddenly swung open. The woman from the front desk appeared behind me. She pinched something into my neck before shoving me through the entrance. Upon waking up, I was tied to a flimsy chair. The dark room was spinning and a foul odor protruded from every direction. It was the first thing I noticed, because it smelled like a strong mixture of rot and chemicals. The hillbilly reception lady came out of the small bathroom without a word and switched on the bedside lamp. As my eyes adjusted to the sharp light, I was confronted by my revolting secret. I didn't want to think about this, didn't want to remember my graceless actions, but it was explicit before my eyes. I could no longer deny what I've done, and I was repulsed with myself.
Lovely little thing, isn't she?
Another person joined us. It was a short man with a hunched back that stepped up and spoke mere inches from my face, his rotting breath violating my nostrils. The majority of his features were concealed behind the hood of his jacket, and his voice rattled in a slow, gruff tone.
Found her there, all broken and dirty. But I fixed her up nice. Don't you think so?
There was a corpse of a woman on the bed. She was dressed in a tattered navy summer dress, her hair styled accordingly, and her delicate face embellished with light makeup. She looked more enchanting in death than she did in life. I almost didn't recognize her as the same lady of the night that I picked up a few weeks ago. I looked away. The shame and guilt was too much to bear. Despite my best effort to suppress the memory, that night came back to me in small segments. She was standing on the corner of a dimly lit street, barely clothed in her raunchy outfit. She appeared pathetically desperate, but the red strings of a lingerie suit tracing her curves caught my abiding attention. Her face revealed that of a lost soul, her expression weary and defeated as I beckoned her to enter the vehicle. We set up in this exact room, and she didn't seem as interested as I initially hoped she would be. Was it too much to ask for a woman to actually enjoy being with me? I was treating her fair, yet her eyes kept glancing towards the dresser where I had set down my wallet, and the realization of her intent summoned a black filter to corrupt my vision. My rage was enshrouded by a dark red blur. I grabbed the first object within reach, which was the body of a ceramic table lamp. Without warning, I smashed it square in her face. The hard impact did far more damage than I had anticipated. She screamed before gargling up a mixture of blood and vomit, though I wagered it was caused by the drugs she had taken earlier. The ornament was decorated with patterns of colored glass, the shards of which stuck out from her cheeks and eyeballs as she continuously wailed. I don't know what came over me, but I muffled the sound she made by placing a pillow over her head and pressing it down until she gave up the fight. Afterwards, I convinced myself that it was only an accident. In truth and beyond my darkest thoughts, I knew that taking a life in such an intimate moment was deliberate to some degree, and also the most exhilarating experience I ever had. Even as I left the room and casually handed in my key at the front desk, I don't remember feeling an ounce of regret. All I felt was a tad nervous about being found out, and even the fear of that possibility came far later, when the high of the experience gradually subsided. Secondhand regret was also long overdue. In fact, shame only mildly tainted me in confrontation with these two strangers. Even then, I can't say I felt sorrow for the right reasons. I couldn't repent for my crime. It offered me a taste of unimaginable ecstasy, and I wouldn't undo it. However, I resented the fact that I hadn't covered up my tracks more adequately. All things considered, I suppose any kind of remorse was a noble step into the right direction.
I'll do you up like I did her.
The man pulled a metal cart closer and presented a syringe. Once again, I glanced onwards to the corpse on the bed. The woman's skin was bedecked with a fine layer of foundation to hide the cuts in her face. Was she the same woman? She was so well conserved. I couldn't imagine what the grotesque man meant by
Doing me up.
like her. Was he going to embalm me? The dreadful answer came about when he pushed my head to the side, and I felt the sting of a needle pierce into my neck. On his messy cart of surgical instruments, my eyes landed on a vial labeled formaldehyde, and I immediately struggled against my restraints. They were so loose. He was going to embalm me, but didn't morticians drain the fluids of a corpse first? Didn't I need to actually be a corpse before this could be done? Would the process be painful when done on a living person? The questions piled up, and my mental state deteriorated by the second, for good reason. I was in a small room with the corpse of a woman I had killed and two lunatics who, instead of alerting authorities like normal people would, found her and embalmed her body. They decorated her remains like a shrine, and if the Snow White bullshit wasn't enough of a demented performance, they also coaxed me back here in the creepiest way possible. I didn't know what their end goal was, revenge or justice. The lines were very blurred. Noticing my relentless struggle in the chair, the hooded man grabbed me by the jaw and positioned my face to the side again. He injected me twice thereafter, once into a vein in my neck and once behind my ear. All the while, the woman stood in the doorway, spitting saliva as she snickered. When he withdrew the needle after the last injection, I finally freed my right hand and made quick use of it by sending a fist directly into his face. He stumbled backwards in a daze while his girlfriend gasped. She came at me, but was too late to stop me from tearing loose my other hand as well. She was a big lady, so I focused on the exit as my main objective. I didn't want to fight her, couldn't fight her, so I only needed to get past her. To my shock, she had choreographed a fighting tactic of her own and shoved me back into the chair with her full weight. When the chair broke beneath our fall, she didn't hesitate to start barraging my face with hard blows. I could feel my nose dislodge, my teeth folded back into my mouth, and even when my airways filled with blood, she still gave no pause to the assault. By some undeserved grace, people began shouting outside. I couldn't tell if they were fighting with each other or if they were responding to the murderous noises coming from our room. Either way, the woman stopped short of breath and pulled herself upward. I could just about feel my own heart beating against my chest when she lifted her heavy weight from my body. I was roughed up to say the least. The brief moment of respite didn't last either, because she stomped her heel down on my shoulder and I swore I could hear the bone cracking from within.
Stay down, you piece of shit.
She uttered and made way to the bathroom, presumably to tend to her boyfriend who had disappeared from the room. I could hear him faintly wheezing. With them both occupied, I had to capitalize on the opportunity before it slipped away. The pain was agonizing, but I managed to crawl towards the door and use the lanky dresser to pull myself upright. The idiots didn't even lock the door, so I stepped outside and blindly ran off. I probably should have made way to my car, but I didn't have the keys on me, and there was no time to go searching for them. I ran into the highway, intending to flag down passing vehicles. Yet, it was so late into the night that the entire road seemed deserted. My only option was to run down the highway and seek shelter in the surrounding forest. Admittedly, I wasn't exactly thinking with logic. The beating, paired with whatever fluids had been pumped into my body, evidently did a number on my sensibility. Each step I took sent a jolt of pain up my spine. Even so, I didn't allow the tormenting ache to stop me. I jogged until I was off the property, and there, on the border of the premises, I discovered the reason why they carelessly left the door unlocked. It all happened so fast. My mind rejected the immediate pain that assailed my lower body, but I heard the skin tear open. I even heard the snap of bone as it shredded through flesh and escaped the confines of my leg. The reality was that I had stepped in a bear trap. It was greatly modified to do severe damage, with layers of extra jaws on the headstock. The ridge was plastered with syringes, the needles positioned upwards. There was no way to decipher every bit of damage done to my leg in such an instant, and there was no possibility left of escaping.
Stand on your feet.
The man snarls, not caring that the flesh in my leg is literally torn open with bone tissue sticking out.
Take him round the back, Carl.
The woman barked at him.
Don't want his disgusting face scaring off our guests.
Of course, there are guests I can call out to, but my mouth is burning from the bile and blood. I can't remember seeing anyone outside when I made my escape, though the parking lot was still somewhat littered with cars. My assailants each grab an arm and begin dragging me around the back. I don't want to know what I look like, beaten to a plum and swollen from my wounds. Vanity be damned.
Why?
I managed to croak out the word, and it's discernible enough for the woman to cough out a chuckle.
Why?
She mockingly directs the question to her boyfriend, and he only groans in return.
We're tired of you city folk not paying your goddamn rooms.
She finally explains as we move in below the pale light, beckoning 2 steps leading up to a back door. Rooms? The message that reflected on an earlier order comes to mind.
Learn to pay your debts.
I rented out that room on my birthday last year. Was I being punished because I forgot to pay the fee that night? Was their anger seriously not stemming from the fact that I literally left a corpse on their property?
We don't care about any street women.
As if reading my mind, the woman answers the question. They forcefully pull me up the steps, my limbs shifting in ways that feels very unnatural. The painful affliction forces my mind to momentarily malfunction, and the next thing I know, I'm seated in a metal chair in a cold room.
My Carl wants to be a mortician.
You left him a nice study piece.
The woman speaks directly into my face, while her boyfriend hums in silent agreement. He's tugging on my legs, securing them with a series of rusty chains.
She was his 3rd project, but I keep telling him he's still not doing it quite right.
Since you owe us,
You can be the next subject for him to practice on.
She steps away and eyes me over, pulling a piece of gum from her lips and twirling it with her dirty index finger. I feel grossly scrutinized under her unwavering stare. It horrifies me to think about 2 other bodies being decorated somewhere in their motel, and it terrifies me more so to realize that I'll soon join them. Outside of my field of view, Carl rummages about in the back of the room, and I hear the wheels of his metal cart being pulled closer once again. Yet another dip in consciousness sends me to a scene of Carl drawing a scalpel blade across my wrist. The blood drips from my arm and pools in the center of the floor where a makeshift drain had been installed. This is it then. He's going to embalm me alive. Or unalive. There's so many chemicals messing with my perception. I don't even know if I should even care about the fate now bestowed upon me. I've always been a determined contrarian, but there's no willpower left within me to entertain hollow denials. This is clearly just the nature of karma at play. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy these stories, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and check out some more of my episodes here.